The Greater Blue Mountains World Heritage Area covers a massive 1 million hectares and is a stronghold for biodiversity in Australia. Boasting 13% of the world's eucalypt species, the area is also a critical refuge for many of the 288 threatened species in the Hawkesbury Nepean catchment, as well as relict species such as the Wallamai pine and Microstrobus or dwarf pine. The Hawkesbury Nepean Catchment Management Authority is working closely with a range of partners to protect the vulnerable 5,000-kilometre fringe of the World Heritage Area. By creating a healthy buffer zone, the weeds, sediment and pest animals can be stopped from invading the park and endangering its unique values.
I mean, we love it and it is beautiful, and thousands and thousands of people come to admire the landscape. And it's very valuable, but the World Heritage listing is because of the variety of life. It's because of what we call the biodiversity. It's all those incredible plants and animals that are out there in that large area, much of it in a very natural, undisturbed condition.
The World Heritage Committee's advisors, when they were looking at whether this place could be listed, were very worried by the number of inholdings, the surrounding lands, the string of little towns across, because they felt it was very vulnerable. And one of the arguments that we could put to them was that it was still intact because the systems were in place to manage it in that way.
You know, there's all sorts of threats to national parks and World Heritage areas generally. Weeds is one. You know, water quality of the water that's running into the World Heritage area is important. By putting native vegetation back in the landscape and preventing the weeds from moving or removing them, then we've got basically less in the landscape which can threaten the World Heritage area directly. And by creating that buffer, we just distance those weeds and those problems from the World Heritage area.
Well, the weed problem in general is enormous. And it is very important that every landowner deals with these threatening weeds on their land to protect the World Heritage areas, to protect their own land and to protect their neighbours. It's what we mean by catchment management. We have to manage the whole catchment.
This is the headwaters in the Capity Valley bordering on the Wallamai National Park that water feeds into the Sydney Basin, and that's incredibly significant. What I do on this block of land can severely affect what happens downstream. So closing off this back area where the water is coming from is really, really important. And I think landowners have a responsibility, and I think surely everybody must see that we have as landowners a responsibility to make sure what you get down there isn't horrible. And that all comes back to the way we manage the land. We still need to make a living off it, but we can do it together. So we achieve a balance that's better, that's good for everybody.
The World Heritage Area is huge, and to some extent we don't know what's out there. There's a lot of endangered species. There's new species like the Wallamai pine have turned up in recent years. So we have to manage on a landscape scale, but where we have found special values, we need to really look after those special values. And here at Lura Falls, we've got this Microstrobus, this dwarf creeping pine that only grows on these south-facing waterfalls. And it's threatened by weed invasion. And it's a lot of work and it's pretty difficult, but we really, to save this species, we've really got to deal with these threatening weeds. The dwarf pine is significant because it's rare. It's got very restricted distribution. It's only on these half a dozen south-facing waterfalls between Wentworth Falls and Katoomba. And all of those waterfalls really have urban development in their catchments. So any problems upstream, of course, flow downhill. And any weeds that are able to travel downhill will, and sediment travels downhill as well.
We're getting above natural rates of erosion occurring, and because we're getting that accelerated erosion, there's a lot more sediment being released into the system downstream. That potentially clogs up the system, can smother sort of fish habitat and those sorts of issues. So yeah, if we can stop the sediment at source, or at least trap it in the reaches where we're working, we can turn off some of that sediment downstream and try and rehabilitate the sections upstream where we're directly working. but there's a definite downstream benefit by reducing the overall sediment load. This particular stream we've put some sort of rock ramps, fishways in, where we've got some quite aggressive bank erosion you can see behind us. In this particular case we put some light mesh fencing in. So it depends a little bit on how degraded the stream is, how far we go in terms of our engineering works.
Come on, girls! We've been in drought for the last 10 years, and most people on the land, like me, don't have an income, haven't had an income through most of that time. So they're really scratching to just keep going, let alone improve the country they're living on. With government assistance, putting in the effort 50-50 with the raw materials being supplied by the grants that CMA have, means together we're improving it. Or we're, like I'm doing here, closing off the animal access to the creek beds so that we do have a wilderness area at the back of this property that leads itself into the national park. The man next door's also got some funding, so he's going to plant trees because his property is very open grassland. It should be woody grassland, but the trees have all been taken down. With a bit of conservation in his last 20 acres, the new regrowth that's coming through there is phenomenal. It'll be like this in 50 years.
A consistent application of good practices is what are going to protect the values of the area, and that involves a cooperative spirit about it, but it also means that the adjoining properties themselves are beautifully looked after and can enjoy the benefits of being adjacent to this extraordinary place.
Yeah, look, if anyone's interested in doing stream rehabilitation, protecting of their native vegetation, the CMA's always keen to work with cooperative and interested landowners in the KBT all across the catchment. As I said earlier, we have incentives that we can assist. We have expertise in the area where we can hopefully add a few, contribute some ideas to protection of these areas, and yeah, always willing to work with keen landowners.
Okay, well, it's probably a good idea, Well, look, everybody has to play a part. I mean, obviously we get out to some pretty special remote areas and work, and we're paid to do it. But people, volunteers in bush care groups, and look after little patches of bush in their own area. And it's very important that people on their own land also are involved in land care type activities, look after the native vegetation on their land and manage the weeds that threaten their land as well as threaten this World Heritage Area. And it is very satisfying to get out here and do this type of work where you know you're protecting really important values.